and that's what we get. And if you look at history, like I was in a gun store the other day, and this one guy, he wasn't talking on a religious thing, he was talking on a worldly thing, but he says the problem started with the hippie generation, them rebelling against God, them wanting to have their own thing and their own pleasures and this and this and that. Well, okay, maybe it manifests itself into reality then, but it started with your parents and even before then. Tolerance and acceptance of a little bit of evil or a little bit of stuff that's not defined as righteous, and it just breeds on itself. You can have a rotten apple is going to destroy the whole bunch. And it's when we don't take those apples out, like homosexuality or bestiality or murder or rape or one thing or another, these victims get, their lives destroyed for that type of thing. And the perpetrators of it never get severely dealt with. Very rarely. Not anywhere near where they should.
Well, more so here in Texas than other places.
Maybe. And when we get back to reinstating God's laws, just like a lot of Christians, and I know you were from that background, about eating pork or shellfish and things like that, but the more you fall in line with Him in His nature, I mean, that's love, is being in obedience to what your Creator desires you to be like. Mm-hmm. And sure, we can say it with our lips all we want, but until we actually start doing it, or are we really willing and able and desire to follow Him, or are we really desire to follow after our own lusts and just say with our lips, Lord, Lord? Some He's going to say, or many He's going to say, depart from me. It all comes down to
choose this day who you'll serve.
Choose this day whom you will serve. And can't serve two masters.
You ever find that preacher I was telling you about, Gene?
I hadn't looked on it. You know how I'm with the names.
It was on the tip of my tongue right then and there. So, currently, the government, and I believe it's hidden in this big stimulus bill, these gun control or gun confiscation, ammo confiscation stuff is hidden in this. That's what
the bailout stuff.
This business by giving you a psychological test
and a physical test and one thing or another. Hell, I tell you what. I mean, if the fact that they don't want you to carry or reload any more 223 or 308, that might suggest the fact that maybe you should have one. Hey, you know?
And on the subject of guns, the founders, it was about defending yourself, but it was also, to a large extent, about making sure the government doesn't oppress you. Isn't that true?
Well, it comes down to the government. They tried and they tried. Well, again, I've seen it from all different angles. I've studied it a lot. I could argue all sides on it, but what it really comes down to,
let me ask you this. How is this idea of registering every gun, tests? I understand that you have to have a particular type of box or place to put your gun as well that is subject to inspection by the government now under this bill. How is a lot of these things similar to what happened in Nazi Germany?
Well, I don't know. I haven't read that, so you know.
Well, that's one piece of this whole thing, was that whatever gun you've got now, you're going to be required to have a certain lockbox or whatever they want to call it to put it in. And the government can come in your house to inspect it and make sure it's up to government snuff on that. I'll tell you what, you have to pay me an awful lot to go into people, if I work for the government, to go into people's houses and make them show me the box that gun's in.
Well, all I can say is that people that are going to stand in the line and register, they'll be the ones like in England that turn them over.
Well, there's always been this argument, well, crime is way down in England, the cops for years didn't have guns, and look what a great society that was.
Now, what's happened to crime since the people are not armed? Look at that.
Well, I understand that.
Now, if you're a property owner over there and you have a place to shoot it, you can still, quote, have it, but you're very restrictive in a lot of things. And tell you what, I believe if this government here, this is what they want to do, and if we fall as a people, the last bastion, the last stronghold in the whole world, I mean, everything's going to go to hell. You know?
Well, that's probably the ultimate plans of
New World Order.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you bring up that there's people behind the scenes that are orchestrating this, and probably have been for many, many years, you're granted a
Conspiracy,
conspiratorial
yeah.
nut. But, in reading, and
interesting, you said that. I was in court. One of the few times I've had an attorney. And I think I told you about this. He was ready to quit practicing law because it was so corrupt. And he's told me on more than one occasion that the enemy, and he saw the police coming out of there, is in that room, and there's nothing but cops in there. People were like, well, there's nothing but police in there. He goes, yeah, that is your enemy, and even more so in the future. And he went off on all this stuff that we were talking about here. And anyway, we happened to find some common ground on some information that both of us had studied and read, which got rejuvenated his juices to want to stay in there as long as possible and fight. Of course, for money, he's getting paid good for it, but
you got to feed yourself.
Yeah, he makes a very decent living, but
when there's an element of righteousness to it, was this Mr. S?
yeah,
Yeah. Or one of his guys?
both. And it was very refreshing to hear.
In general terms, what would you recommend people do at this point?
Well, for one, like you finally came around to decided to get a gun. Get some ammo, practice with it.